Hey guys, it's Zach back with another review. This time it's the Siroolac 2.0 glass pad, and right off the bat, let's check out that sick logo. Yep, it's a mouse with a shotgun. You may have seen Logpile's review of this pad. He said he accepted it for the logo. I'll be honest, I accepted this pad after talking with Log. Thank him for this video existing. Siroolac did reach out for me for review and offered this review unit, but my opinions and thoughts are my own. Jumping right into it though, I have sort of been what you might say is glass pilled recently. Forever I was a cloth user. I was like, glass is stupid. I'm never using glass. I'll just buy a $5 cutting board. Why would I ever use glass? It's hard, sticky arms, cold glass. This sucks. I think I was wrong because I've been absolutely loving glass lately. I've been testing the Oni's Oath from Tenta-x, used Singularity for a while, and a couple other pretty sick glass pads. Oni's Oath on the faster side, this a much more balanced glass surface, which there is definitely a time and place for in when I'm gaming and in the market in general. This is marketed as ultra thin, and that is very true. It is only 1.6 millimeters, very thin there. It has a full anti-slip rubber base, and I'm going to stop and talk about that right away here. I don't typically have any issues with this surface on my desk with pads slipping that have a decent base. I would say one of the drawbacks of this pad is if you press up on the bottom, for example, it can just slide all around. It's not like the base isn't necessarily like adhesive. It doesn't stay in place. When I'm using the pad, mostly like swiping back and forth, even my arm dragging, you can see here on my desk it's not moving, but I think if you had like a cheaper Surface desk, for example, like you can see a little bit of movement there. And again, if I press up on the bottom here, it does move a little bit. So not the stickiest base, but not really a problem for me in use. The surface itself, again, is on the more balanced side of glass pads, I would say. For example, with this Rapoo VT7, decent glide. I would not call this anything like an ice rink. It's not very fast. Again, not as fast as Oni's Oath, not as fast as, well, I guess a faster batch of the skypad 4.0 or the 5.0. You get a nice glide. It's relatively quick compared to like a lot of cloth pads, but it's not completely uncontrollable. And that's the thing I like about glass pads is you're not going to sink into the base at all. It's going to be the most consistent glide you can find, but there's going to be very low static friction. Guess my mouse is dying here. The static friction on this being higher than like a lot of other speed pads like the Beast from tenta-x or even like a skypad 4.0, but still very low as it is glass. And then the dynamic friction again on this, I wouldn't call it like a control glass pad, for example. It strikes me as a little bit faster than Singularity. So it's more of like a balanced glass pad, which I know it might sound stupid to be like, oh, you can have controlled glass and fast glass and like balanced glass, but it is 100% undoubtedly a thing. And this is a nice change because I had been on the speed side of glass, I had been on the control side of glass, and this is like the dead center all-arounder of glass for what it's worth. I'm very comfortable using this in all sorts of scenarios. I was doing decent, not great in static on like a faster glass pad. This slowed me down and provided a little bit more stopping power than other glass pads, but it still gave me like a nice glide. I was able to flick relatively accurately and just track as smooth as a dream. I find like control balanced glass pads with that low static friction, easy direction change, just to be absolutely a dream for tracking scenarios. And that's what I really enjoyed this pad for. The surface itself is, I would say, feels a little bit frosted. It's described as like tempered glass and an etched surface. It's actually pretty stick resistant for my arm. Like right now in here, for example, it's like 82 degrees. I hate my office and how hot it gets to my PC. My arm's not sticking too badly. So like when I played this in the daytime and it was like 70 degrees in here, not a lot of humidity, I just stuck to a bare arm and it was fine. But whenever my arm heated up, I was able to use this Pulsar ES sleeve. I did lose my short version and I honestly thought I had a long one. So now I have this and this stupid thing goes all the way up to my shoulder almost. It is what it is. With this though, super consistent. I'm someone who only wants a sleeve that goes to the wrist because I do like using my palm for a little extra control when I want it on a glass pad. That might be controversial, but hey, to each their own. Some people, they prefer sleeves like this that have like a spot for your thumb. Let me show you why I absolutely do not like that at all. In theory, I want to love this kind of sleeve, which looks a little bit ridiculous because it minimizes, actually eliminates all contact with your hand with a pad beside maybe the bottom of your pinky, depending on how you grip the mouse. But for me, the problem is when I like grip a mouse like this with how I have it, it actually causes some tension here and the mouse doesn't quite sit into my palm the way it usually does. And with my grip and how I support the mouse here, I actually use my hand interacting with that part of the mouse to move it partially, and I just can't do that as accurately without having actual contact with my palm here. So this kind of sleeve is completely out for me. I use one like this that stops at the wrist. Sleeve tangent over. Let's get back to the pad itself. Like I said though, like I sort of like frosted. It's like a little bit textured. It's not quite as like buttery smooth. Like the Oni's Oath just feels so smooth. It's not dissimilar to a skypad, but it's also not quite as smooth as that. As far as skates go on this pad, all the skates I used felt good as far as like these basically large pad skates, these dot skates from Ultra Glide on this 10. also sound good. But as you might be able to pick up, this is actually not the quietest pad, I would say. It's a little bit louder. Like these dot skates, for example, you can hear them making a pretty decent amount of noise. That's not something that really bothers me when I'm in game because I have like IEMs or a headset on and they're blocking the noise. You hear these pad skates not quite as loud, but there were different skates I used in testing that had varying levels of volume. They aren't quite as loud when I test them in Onis Oath, or like the skypad 4.0. They have really good sound considerations on those pads. This is not obnoxiously loud. It's not as bad as like a skypad 2.0, but I thought I'd point out it was a little bit louder than like a quiet preference. Like if you don't have a headset on, you'll hear that moving around while you're playing. I talked about how thin this pad was, and when it comes to the edges here, they're not really rounded. It's a very thin pad, so it's not like the roughest on my arm, but like if I do move it back and forth, I can feel it here. The way I rest my arm on the pad like this, it didn't bother me at all. I'm moving like this, I'm not really contacting that too much, but you should just know there's not really any rounding here, so there could be a little bit of discomfort for you. Not for me, but something to definitely be aware of. This is a mouse pad. What else do I have to talk about? It was packaged very well. No concerns that would be broken outside of like normal shipping situations on the way to my house. So that was good to see from a lesser known company. And I guess as far as like purchasing decisions and price, let's pull that up here now on Amazon. This does have Prime shipping. I'm just in a private browser. But anyway, we have the larger 480 by 400 size here coming in at actually $99. I swear this was cheaper when I got it, but that's interesting to see. And then the smaller size here comes in at $80 and also has a coupon for 10% off. Obviously, we have the black and white option here. What it comes down to is this is interesting, right? So the skypad, their latest version is always going to retail at $130. This is coming in at $100. There is typically a 10% coupon on this one as well, so we'll call it $90. It was $100 for like that Skidira pad that I reviewed. That has pretty sick art on it. This is just normal black and white. The Skidira pad was a little bit slower, but this is not like a budget like Singularity. I think like the Halakon Harut, for example, other pads you can get around $80. So it is like going to come in $10 more than that, but it is free shipping on Prime. So as far as pricing goes, I'm kind of torn. It's a good pad. I enjoyed it. It's a balanced glass pad, probably the most balanced middle of the ground one that I've used so far. It is nice you can get on Amazon Prime, 2-day shipping, maybe even faster depending on where you're at. I would wait for the 10% off coupon to pop back up on this. The shortcomings, again, going back to the pad itself, are the lack of rounding on the edges. You might want a little bit larger size. Like you might find yourself missing that 20 millimeters in width, that 10 millimeters in height. Not a lot of surface area, but something to take note of. 480 by 400, pretty okay for me in use, but I obviously do wish it was bigger. And then like just a little bit louder here on the noise than some other pads that I've tested. I guess I'll leave it up to you to decide if you think that this is a decent price for this pad. Again, it's a very solid pad. I would have no problem using this going forward. Obviously, I test a ton of things, use a bunch of pads, so I'm not going to be maining this because realistically, I don't main anything. But overall, my experience with this pad, very positive. Nice surface, great balanced experience with the awesome properties of glass, but nothing crazy in the dynamic speed. Decently resistant to arm sticking in normal conditions. Obviously, gets sticky in conditions most pads would get. Would recommend an arm sleeve just for consistency. And overall, don't regret testing this pad at all. Glad I've experienced yet another version of a glass pad, and this has not in any way deterred me from continuing to use glass pads going forward. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. You can find me on X at DasherZach. Check out the Mousecast podcast. Join up on my peripheral Discord. And with that, we'll see you.